Well, in my world, data and intuition are big friends. I think they are two very different systems of getting insight, and they've got very different strengths and weaknesses. So when you pair them right, they can complement each other very well. So to give you sort of an indication of that friendship, let's start with intuition. I mean, intuition is one of the most magical things, in the world. How this wonderful sense of an idea sort of popping into your head. And intuition is very, very rich because it's actually made up of, decades of experience all sort of distilled down. So it's got a couple of big advantages. One is fast. So an intuition, when it comes, it's like blinding light sometimes. Secondly, it's been distilled down into a very simple idea. So intuitive ideas tend to be very, very sticky because they've been distilled so they can move quite quickly. So that's the sort of real power of intuition, and when it's operating at its best, it really does get to the heart of things. So that's the power of intuition, but it has some serious limitations as well. The limitations are quite obvious in the sense that it's your intuition and it could be wrong. And very simply, in this industry you work across multiple categories. Some of them you're very familiar with, you buy the categories all the time, so your instincts tend to be often, quite naturally sort of right. But there's a lot of categories where you don't have very, very sort of deep experience in, so there's limitations there. And then secondly, we are very diverse in South Africa. So your beautifully distilled, boiled down intuitions can be based on a very limited context. They are absolutely right for you and your buddies, but they just don't stretch to everyone. So yeah, that's intuition. Data is beautiful. I don't know how it's been sort of just demonized. It's, when a database is a massive source of insight. It might look like numbers, which are very dry, but it's code for human behavior, so it's like you're a detective, sifting through clues to kind of pick out stuff. And then data's got a lot of advantages. Big picture. Most of us, no matter what kind of rich lives we live, are limited. Data gives you this beautiful big perspective. But the big problem with data is the processes of data, both the research design, which can often be very, very flawed, research methodology, which is often very, very flawed, and then analysis paralysis, where you've got so much data, people actually can't get a single thought out. It's the whole thing of can't see the wood for the trees. So you've got a long list of checklists, and there's no idea there, there's nothing. So those are the kind of the problems. So a very famous one that was done was in the wine industry. So the wine industry has always been sort of traditionally characterized by a sort of elite group of people like Kathy, who will taste a wine and predict that this is going to be a valuable wine in sort of 10 years or 20 years, and there's obviously a big financial investment around that decision. And this sort of guy came in, and he was not a wine expert at all, didn't have any training in it, just ran a couple of sort of algorithms to check kind of good cultivars, worked out a simple sort of pattern around sort of rainfall and soil, plugged that in, and then started to sort of put his own predictions out there. And obviously caused great controversy. The wine snobs were like, please, this guy is a Philistine, he knows nothing, the subtleties of, and he won. And his predictions were much more accurate than the experts. So that was kind of one study, and there was kind of a couple done in that sort of space. But now that there's sort of, the body of experiments has got quite big, the simple answer about data versus intuition is a slightly deflating one, but it's 50-50. So half the time intuition wins and half the time data wins, with data currently having a slight advantage. And what is quite interesting about that advantage is actually why data has an advantage is that it never misses the obvious. And this is quite an important insight. They find that people who are masters at their craft will often miss the obvious things because they're so caught up in trying to be clever and find the nuances and the subtleties. So this is not a story about data being better than intuition, but it's a caution that you can be too clever sometimes and you miss the most obvious things. So I think that's a nice insight.